No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Today, we're going to get into a few big things from around the world based off what we saw from Jordie Barrett in Leinster versus Glasgow. Is that guy the most all-round skilled player on the planet? Size, pace, skills, kicking, passing, all of those things. We'll ask that question. We'll also ask, considering he's been over there in Ireland, learning about the Irish setup, learning from Jacques Nienaber about South African styles possibly as well, should more New Zealanders be heading off on those kind of sabbaticals, but not of their own accord? Should NZR be sending them there to upskill and bring that knowledge back to New Zealand? We'll also look at Scott Barrett. Plenty of talk about him heading into the weekend. He answered his critics big time on the weekend as well. We'll have a look at the Ashley and Martin turning point, some analysis for you on Rush D within that, how to cope with it, how to deliver on it. Also, knees to the ground. Does that make a tackle in your book? Probably not. I'm going to ask the boys a little bit about that. And redoing our picks as well, looking ahead to the rest of the season, who could make the finals. We also have a very special guest, Portia Woodman, arguably the greatest women's rugby player of all time, one of the great attacking weapons, coming off another title to add to her World Cup crowns with the Blues and Super Rugby Aupiki before they play the crossover game against the Tahs to find out who is the best in Australasia. So lots and lots to get into, including your emails, your questions, your comments, and the picks. Joining me for all of these things, somehow in 55 minutes, James Parsons.
That was a hell of an intro.
Yeah,
there's a lot to get through.
So much to look forward to.
Yeah, another great weekend of footy and, Super Rugby and Super Rugby Aupiki, it just seemed to be the gifts that keep on giving.
Yeah, we've got Bryn Hall coming in, slightly jet-lagged from a flight to Sydney, but as always, looking smooth despite it.
No, you're too nice to me, Ross. It's been a bit of a whirlwind post the Sunday game, so yeah, just got onto a flight to Sydney. Been planning to get over here to meet my brother and some family. So we've got a week off. We had a good win against Suntory on Sunday, and they've given us the week off. So spend some time in Sydney and hopefully get down to the beaches and get a bit more of a tan than I have at the moment.
Is Bernard Foley there?
Sadly, no, my old mate, he decided to go to Bali. We did talk around getting on the same flight for Sydney, but I think he needs a break for me. So we spent a little bit too much time together, and he's getting over to Bali. I think Jesse Creel's over there, so probably not a bad substitute, him getting over there and seeing old Jesse Creel.
Holy dooly, Jesse Creel in Bali. That's a hell of a carcass he could run poolside.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm probably not running any form of having a top off if I'm next to Jesse Creel, because it's it's an impressive setup. So yeah, I presume that Bernard will be wearing a singlet. But in saying that, he backs himself and he's in pretty good nick at the moment. So yeah, watch out, Bali.
Wow, premier setup that you've seen. Anything better than Jesse Creel?
I don't think so, man. It's a pretty impressive rig. Probably SBW would be the only one that comes to mind. But
yeah, Jibsy Karifi runs a pretty impressive setup.
Yeah, that's a fair call, actually. He does run an immaculate setup, as they would say.
Right, okay. Enough of that.
What a start to the show.
What a start. Cheering. Let's talk about an immaculate skill set then, because on the weekend, Jordie Barrett was absolutely phenomenal for Leinster against Glasgow. Let's run some of these stats by you. 15 carries, 39 metres, 17 passes, 4 offloads, 5 kicks, 14 tackles, 3 turnovers, man of the match in a 52-0 drubbing coming off the back of a 62-0 drubbing the previous week. Leinster are on fire and Barrett is right at the heart of that. It shows how good this is for him and how good this is for New Zealand rugby to have him in that setup and picking up all of that information.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned a few weeks back about how impressive it is that he's chosen this direction to get better. He wants to grow his game and use his sabbatical that way. And I suppose it's also showing how important the 12 jersey is in the trends of rugby. There's always that fixation on 9 and 10, but as we've seen even in Super Rugby with David Havili, the importance of that 12 position. But most of that I'm not surprised with, but I suppose the biggest area that to me is more prevalent is the breakdown turnovers, the ability to tackle and get the turnover. And and none of them led to penalties. He actually just got the turnover, or he was looking for the strip. It was such a performance. And I also like the after-match interview where he goes, if you care enough, because they're like, oh, how hard was it to back up, and how hard is it going to be back up? And he goes, well, if you care enough, you will. You know, so there's clearly just an edge about his preparation and the way he works during the week, and he's getting the rewards for it.
And he's playing underneath Leo Cullen, obviously an Irish mastermind in rugby. He's got Jack Nienaber there on defence. Tyler Blandale got a Kiwi mindset on attack. There are all these different approaches that he's learning from over there, Brynner. It's a really solid way of picking up on not just how they run things over in Ireland for next time they play him, but across the world.
Get in the minds of people from the Irish who have been successful, the South Africans who have been successful. And let's not, we can also talk about the squad that they have. When you're playing outside an Irish 9, 10, 13, 15 as well, we talk around the spine, and then we're talking around the loose forward shares with Van der Fleer, and obviously the more that they have there. The players that he's playing with, the more that he's probably been able to learn how they are playing. And to be honest, it just looks like that he's worrying about his own role and being able to execute his skill set. So the good thing that I like about Leinster at the moment is they're playing to his skill set. We've touched on a lot around him being able to have the triple threat, run, pass, kick. Jip touched on the turnovers defensively that he's bringing to his game as well. But it seems like Leinster are able to bring the best out of a Jordie Barrett, which probably, I guess, is a good challenge for the All Blacks, is how can we get Jordie to play the way he is in Leinster? And I know it's at international level, but it's very similar to how Ireland do play. Leinster, there's a lot of players that play in their Ireland style. So, can the All Blacks see with what they're seeing with Jordie Barrett, can they try and implement a game plan which can be based around Jordie's skill set that he's been able to do really, really well for Leinster, and the reason why they're playing so well in the Championship Rugby at the moment?
We can see it as a win, definitely, for Jordie and potentially the All Blacks for what intel he can bring, but don't underestimate what Jordie's doing for Prendergast at 10. And I mentioned Dave Havili and what he's done with Taha Kemara, but I do think having Jamison Gibson Park inside Prendergast, obviously that Irish connection, but a different style of 12 outside him, and ways of, I suppose, growing his development and the way he sees the game and how he can better use the players outside him and what he can now demand once he gets that international level in the Irish jersey.
And after talking last week with Malcolm Marks about how Springboks play everywhere in the world, and one of the great parts of that is they bring all sorts of different styles and intel back into the squad in a way that we don't get within the All Blacks at all, because you've got to be playing in New Zealand. That made me think, so if Jordie's able to do that, should NZR be thinking about, we're not going to give sabbaticals to players who want them. We're going to start looking around the world at places where we should be sending our players for 6 months and try to organise sabbaticals. Should a 10 be heading to a certain country? Should a prop be going to a certain country to learn their trade for international football from the styles that are played elsewhere, and then bring them back and use the players to build that knowledge set, not just the coaches?
I think you've got to be careful, because we've got a product of our own that's pretty strong at the moment and doing well in Super Rugby, and you don't want to remove talent out. There's obviously been examples previously, Caleb Trask had some time up at in Japan, so I think that age group underneath, I think there was going to be a relationship with Harlequins, even when I was playing, in terms of players being sent. So I think at that younger age, potentially in key positions, going over and creating a relationship that way. But I think you've got to have a player that has chosen to do it to get the most out of it. I think if you put a player, depending on their family situation, over there from a contractual point of view, I just don't think you're going to get the impact that we've seen with Jordie, who said, no, I want to go there to be better. So I think it's a balancing act. But with all sabbaticals, NZR will have to sign off on it anyway, and it's part of the discussion, no doubt, and anything's negotiable when you're negotiating a contract, and maybe some they add, I suppose, a further width of sabbaticals, but some sabbaticals it's your choice, and other sabbaticals it's a 50-50.
There must be plenty of players out there, though, Bryn, who must be thinking, oh, geez, I wouldn't mind learning that Irish attacking style with the strike plays and the phases and the options, or going to France to understand how Toulon or Toulouse work. There must be quite a few young guys who'd be like, yes, this is a great way of building what I have and bringing it home.
I think it is a bit of a balance, and I see Jordie's done enough, I think, in my eyes, that he's done enough for the black jersey. He's done enough time in Super Rugby to, I guess, have the opportunity to then have a sabbatical, to then go over to improve himself, because I still think we do need those guys at Jordie's age, or even Lester Whainganuka, who decided to go off, but kids that are at that age, we want them playing in Super Rugby, because it only bolsters our competition, and we're trying to make a competition that is competitive, right? We kind of find that with the South Africans going, and I guess Australia this year really coming to the party of competitiveness-wise. We want our best players here at a young age to try and upskill, I guess, themselves here in New Zealand for the All Blacks and for the Super Rugby franchises, but for the competition as well, having those kind of players here to develop and be, stars of the future.
Especially if you're only taking a single Super Rugby season out. I know we want stars in Super Rugby, but a single season in a 10-year career could be really great for everyone.
I think if you use Karl Tuanuka-Awhi as another example, he chose to go to Narbonne, he came back, played for Harbour, played for the Blues, played for the All Blacks. Would have he been the scrummager he is without going there? No. You can talk to him. He certainly wouldn't have. He almost did his apprenticeship over there, brought it back. So I don't think there's ever going to be a losing out of the situation for either the club they go to or for what product of player comes back. I still think we've got to look after Super Rugby Pacific personally, because it is the breeding ground. It has had a proven history of doing enough to provide players the ability to play at international level, and it's getting stronger. So I do think it's a real balancing act that we don't gut our own pipeline that we potentially can't fill, and then you fill younger guys that potentially aren't ready, and it's hard. Rugby's hard. Once you sort of get tagged with something, you have to do quite a lot to overcome it and change people's mindsets. So it's a cost-benefit analysis, I would say.
Fair enough. Speaking of cost benefits, the cost of Jordie Barrett and the benefits that they've got over there for Leinster are huge. And when we talk about best players in the world, everyone says Antoine Dupont for his skill set, for his effect on a game, the way that he can create a winning moment or turn a match and all of those kind of things. But when you look at straight up and down skill set, you've got a guy like Jordie Barrett who can kick goals, who can kick long, very long, who can kick short, kick attacking kicks, kick out to wingers, who can get over the advantage line with his huge body, who can make an outside break, who can throw an offload, who can pass beautifully off both hands. We've even seen him go up in the line-out for the Hurricanes a couple of times. This is a guy. Is there a single player in world rugby who can cover every skill set the way that he can?
Probably in the current, it's a different position. It's quite hard to compare positions. If you're to compare him in terms of the 12, probably not, because of the makeup of certain squads. He is almost the complete package. He's got the ability to read attack, gets intercepts, has a really good knack of reading that rush D system that's run at the Hurricanes with Corey Jane. But you can't ignore, although he does it in a different way, Antoine Dupont. He does have as big an impact on the game, and I believe he may not kick goals, but that guy probably could kick goals.
I can't see him smashing a prop or getting over the advantage line.
I think he can. He gets pretty low. I do think he's a pretty courageous dude. If someone came down his channel, I reckon he'd put him in a similar position. He'd either probably go lower, but yeah, I think if you were to compare, I think in terms of impact, absolutely Dupont. But outside of that, it's hard. Probably in that 12 position, the only person I can think of, not currently, well, he may be currently playing, I'm not too sure, but Francois Steyn. He had the ability to kick long. He's big body defensively, big carries, also had the finesse. But outside of that, I can't really think of someone with that complete package in the midfield.
Brenner, you think of anyone?
Not with the complete skill set, with what Jordie does have. Now, we've touched on Delande in terms of him being the best midfielder, one of the best midfielders in the world. But his skill set works for South Africa and what's required of him. But if we're talking in terms of the full package, the run, pass, kick, defensively, everything that's involved with being a 12 with the skill set wise, I think there's no one better in the world than Jordie Barrett. Completely agree with Antoine Dupont and what he does at halfback. I don't think there's anybody else that influences in that position or just in world rugby.
Dan Carter's the last person I can think of who can do all of those things. Was a great tackler, was great over the ball, would get turnovers, would do all those things. Frans Steyn, yes, but Dan Carter is probably the last one I can think of who absolutely could do that.
Yeah. I've got no argument.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is I just don't know whether Jordie Barrett gets his dues. for what he can do. Certainly not from Kiwis. I don't think Kiwis quite respect what he can do.
It's at the end of the day, everyone's looking for the result, the outcome, and that's probably why. Yeah, it's hard to say, like, because it is a team sport, so I don't think you want to create the ultimate complete package, because like a Delende, like what's around him makes his strength strong. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I get your point. Like, it is, when you pose the question prior to the show, it is pretty hard. Like, I had to think long and hard about France staying, you know, like it wasn't that easy. So look, I don't know if he gets his dues. You know, we had a message the other day that, you know, he wouldn't walk back into the All Blacks. I think this has probably ended that. But yeah, I think he's very well respected by all players across the world, and I suppose opposition fans.
Hopefully the All Blacks have seen in terms what Jordie can do. Can they incorporate a game plan where they can use his skill set and be able to influence the game like he has with Leinster? Because, you know, watching him in Glasgow, even his time there, his involvements in those games is set up to his skill set of being able to do it at the right time. So hopefully the All Blacks have seen that and can use the kind of the pitches that they've seen with Leinster to try and get Jordie to play like that, and having given him some opportunities to use the skill set that we've touched on, being triple threat. Well,
he's a leader in the team, though. You know, like, I think he will come back with some, you know, clear things he wants to bring into his own game, and I suppose that environment. And you do have to acknowledge the coaching staff over there, which you have, in terms of their understanding of how best to utilise certain players, and acknowledge the forward pack that's probably putting him in the position to do so. But yeah, I think it's, I said it a couple of weeks ago, I was seriously impressed when he made the decision to do what he's doing, because you know he's doing it to be the best player in the world, and I think we're going to get something pretty close to it when it returns.
And he's a rugby geek. Like, he's one of those guys, similar to Scott's like it, Bowden's like it. They are deep in their rugby, aren't they? So I can only imagine he'd be writing things down.
You could just hear in that after-match interview, like, that's what impressed me the most, is like, man, his razor-sharp focus in terms of his preparation. And we say it here all the time, and sometimes it sounds like cliche and people don't take it, but the reality is your performance is dictated between Monday and Friday. Saturday should just take care of itself.
Now, we spoke about the Hurricanes' rush D a little bit, Chipper did at least. So this week, as we get into the Ashley and Martin turning point, we really wanted to have a look closely at rush D, how to handle it, how to execute it, and what people have done on the weekend to show that could be a serious turning point in the way teams play. Chipper, what did you see? Yeah,
I suppose if you look at the Crusaders-Hurricanes game, you know the Hurricanes run a rush D, and they've run it efficiently for a number of years. But if we specifically highlight Moananu's try off the back of, I think it was their second try around the 15th minute. If we start with the Hurricanes, and they rush and close, but if you don't close with each other, you're going to leave a gap. So if you look at that clip in particular, and we'll play it over, is the person that's on tip defender, and I think it might be Numia, can sometimes have two jobs. He can focus on the tip and get out the back to a Taha Kimera. Now, Taha Kimera sees that they're obviously tight, and he asks for the ball out the back. When he gets out the ball, he runs on that 45-degree angle, which brings in Gallagher. So Gallagher has to tackle him. Where the problem came is the next two or three defenders didn't close with him, and because Gallagher was originally lined up on Scott Barrett, then went to tackle Kimera, that's where the hole was created. Kimera, pops it to Barrett, Barrett pops it to Moananu, and the rest is your oyster. And we've already spoken about rush D's beautiful if you're all on the same page, but the key here is, for a learning opportunity, is if your inside goes, because remember, if the guy inside you rushes up and you can see the back of his number, he doesn't know where you are. Mm-hmm. So to help him, you have to follow him in. And in this occasion, because of the threats of those, I suppose, of Moananu, who we know is a good ball carrier, didn't follow him, which left Barrett free, which then was, sort of an arms tackle, and then they scored from there. But if you actually look at it from the Crusaders' point, and which I think is the turning point really about what this clip is about, is the depth. So they really drew the defenders out. So even the depth of the first pod drew out that first block of defenders. The depth of Kimera, the pass was quite deep back, and it gave him time to get across and not allow Numia to get off and make that tackle for Gallagher to stay on Barrett and Delaney to stay on Moananu. So then but then it's if you watch at the start of the play, the depth of Barrett and Moananu, like they are so far back. And so the timing of their run is always in perfect sync, just to draw the defender out, pop into a hole. And even Barrett, to finish it off, he drew in 2 defenders, pop, and the rest is history. And I just thought it was a great clip to sort of show that the Crusaders knew what was coming, but the way they executed that, you know, you can do it 100 times at training, but it was just perfect from everyone in that sequence in terms of that depth to use what is a strength of the Canes and make it a weakness.
The small chats on the run is really, really important. So no doubt whenever you play against a Hurricanes team or Lion Speed team, you know that's going to come. So your depth is really important. The deep pass to Kimana is really important, but then it's the guys on the outside, the 2 forwards usually, or the 3 forwards that are outside that 10 in that space, usually at that 5th, 6th, 7th defender. They're communicating on the run with Kimana as well. And you've also got the guy in the back pivot, which is usually a Harvilli or a midfielding back, all kind of talking while that play is kind of going out, because sometimes, like you said, if there's that one disconnection in that defensive line, that guy's communicating where that space is to help out that decision maker. Because sometimes if you don't get that depth right, and I guess that's the perfect example of Kimana having the right depth, but if you just aren't deep enough and you've got someone that's talking to you saying that there's a shooter coming onto you and you're calling a tip pass or early or square, it just gives that decision maker a little bit more time to make the better execution in whatever that role is. So what I really enjoyed about that clip is that everybody's on the same page. We talk around animation, and we've done a lot that with Ireland, with how square those forwards play, the tip lines to be able to bring guys in. And then I guess it's the depth outside that, and then it's been able to, I guess, be engaged outside Kimara or outside that 10 pocket and that 12 and behind. Because if you want to be able to hit those 2 forwards on the outside of Kimara, but then if you want to go back deep again to the pivot of the second pivot, you can then be able to have enough time to be able to execute the crossfield kick, which we've seen from a Harvilli or Jordie Barrett, with the notion that that winger is going to come nice and high, or the midfielder is going to come nice and high, and then you're able to execute a kick pass or a bridge pass from that outside attacking area outside Kimura.
And Brent, I reckon that was the threat that didn't allow them to close. Didn't allow the Hurricanes to close because of that crossfield kick. Just put them in 2 minds. But, you know, credit to the tip runner that held Numia, but honestly, as a forward that has been in that second sort of pod, it is so easy to get your timing wrong, and you always go early. And Barrett and Moananu they looked so relaxed, and they just were almost jogging into the holes and, you know, exploded once they got the ball. It was a very impressive play, and, you know, in the end, if you look at the scoreline, that play, you know, in terms of points, was a big difference.
What if you compare that to Damian McKenzie and what happened in the game on the weekend where they got in his face? And it was a tough day at the office for him. Was that a problem with handling rush D, or what was that?
So I think, one, he was at fullback, so a few of the handling errors were from, you know, the Waratahs love their contestables. They've got Suoliti, they're always going to put those contestables. But I do think, for the most part, the Waratahs did a really good job at the breakdown or offset piece to disrupt it enough that allowed time for that. But that, like, I feel like, you know, Bryn and I have both been in teams where there's a Damian McKenzie and you put a bib on him all week and everyone's just out to get them. It seemed like the Waratahs were like, okay, if we can stop him, we give ourselves a chance. And you know, even to the credit on the attacking side with the Waratahs, if you look at Suoliti's try, same thing. They held their feet, Rampling came out, and they isolated that, put the ball out, and that's what gave the one-on-one. So again, the rush D can be your friend, but if you go on your own, it just isolates you. Whereas the Waratahs, if you look at they just were all on the same page, and they were almost just saying, if you can get it to the outside and score, go for it. We're committing to this. And it was an all or nothing play for them because season's on the line basically, and they stuck to it. And, you know, it was a bold call, and they put enough pressure on that just didn't allow the Chiefs to capitalise on a game where they had, you know, 60% possession and territory.
The Chiefs, when they've got everything firing, they're really hard to defend. They've got a great attacking ability. The kind of the pitches that we touched on with the Crusaders. Damian does that really well when it's good going forward. They've got some good pivots on the outside with Sean Stevenson that we've seen in a little bit of the wider edge. But unfortunately on the weekend, the Waratahs defensively, you know, they were operating at 91% on the weekend. So they were able to be efficient in that tackle area, but then also not to give the opportunities of Damian of how he attacks, how he probably has done in the first part of the year. So, and just to go back on Jip's point, look, I thought the the Waratahs attack was the best of the week in terms of what they've had for the season. Their animation and their swinging of their attack, they were really, really good. They probably had 2 tries that were disallowed. That could have been 28-0 or 28-3 at halftime, but they were disallowed. There could have been more points on the board, but I really enjoyed the way they were able to layer their attack. They made Rampling, as an example, come out of the line to be able to hit the right option. And sometimes you just need to give Joseph Swa'ali'i a one-on-one, because when he's at fullback and he's got a little bit more edge, then it's good to go.
Yeah. Now, look, Scott Barrett was obviously superb on the weekend. We did a couple of weeks ago answer an email from Andrew Brody saying, is his form there? And then we saw last week a few guys on the breakdown come out hard and say, no, this form isn't there. Maybe he shouldn't be All Black captain. We saw a response, a big response. I think that we said a couple of weeks ago that his numbers are actually quite good. But then they took good numbers and he took them to the next level.
Absolutely. And I think the first point I'd make is what he did during the week at his media conference, to me, shows exactly why he is All Black captain. Because he goes, it might not be where it's at, and I want to get better. Why that to me is great leadership is he's put his hand up publicly, but he's also given permission to every other player that sometimes comes under the spotlight that don't avoid it, just front it and move on and then deliver with your actions. And I don't know, it was just, I still don't think he was playing poorly personally for his position. And sometimes it is missed that yes, statistically they may not be as high, but what he's doing that allows someone like a Jamie Hanna to shine, fresh off coming back from an injury and so forth. So I just think it was a great week of leadership and almost just showing exactly why he is All Black captain and why he will remain All Black captain.
Brendan, what I saw, I think the key differences this week, post-contact meters were up considerably. Like he had more carries and he got through the tackles and got post-contact. But his line-out work, they weren't really utilising him previously, and then he took a couple of steals and got 7 line-outs. So his average so far through the comp has been 2.
Yeah, look, and I think that's probably one area that's a massive weapon for Scooter. I think he's really good in terms of the defensive meetings, knowing him, and I guess the work that's done behind the scenes with him, and even when Sam Whitelock was there. So there's a lot of intel and preparation that's probably gone through with him getting a lot more line-out steals in the weekend against the Hurricanes. But yeah, the contact area has always been good around Scott, and I thought on the weekend against the Hurricanes, on both sides of the ball, I thought he was probably the best that he's been at the season. And now probably the stats haven't shown that in the early part of the season, but for whatever reason, whether he read into a little bit around the media, the microscope that was under him, I just thought he was relentless in terms of on both sides of the ball. And I thought his decision-making defensively as well. Sometimes he's probably had a little bit of a lick and been able to try and go for the ball or give away a little silly penalty, but I thought he did really well at kind of listening to the ref and being able to not give away those penalties that probably have crept into his game in some games in past seasons. So yeah, a massive result for Scott, and hopefully it's one that can continue for the rest of the year.
Because he's the All Black captain, the spotlight's always on him. But I think the game management, Britain, was a lot better. They had 34 kicks to 25 and not too much difference in terms of metres. 835 for the Crusaders, 800 for the Hurricanes. But they had a kick strategy around attacking kicks and, territory-based kicks. They didn't fail in exits. They did give away 12 penalties, but similar to the Fiji and Drua game, man, their scramble D, their goal line D, their mojo's back. They are a very hard wall to break down, and I think they're positioning themselves, alongside the Brumbies. I think is probably the two that people, I didn't consider would be at this time deemed the dark horse as such, but those two very successful organisations are starting to find their DNA back and their mojo and setting themselves up beautifully.
So if we look at our top 6 at the moment, we've got the Crusaders and then the Chiefs and then the 4 Aussie teams below them, the Force at the bottom, not quite as good as the other 3. Brenna, let's have a look at what our picks should be from here on in. Like if you recalculate who you think the top 6 will be in 6 or 7 weeks' time when we go into the playoffs, where do you see the change? You've got a few teams lurking below. You've got just 8 points between 10th and 3rd, I think, on the table. Who do you think is going to make the top 6?
Look, I think the Crusaders, Chiefs, Brumbies will stay in and around the end of the Reds. I think the Waratahs on the weekend was a pretty big performance, so I think they'll probably just do enough in terms of being able to slip in and stay in that 5th or maybe drop down a little bit more. But I probably see at the moment with the Force, the sixth one being probably a bit of move, and there could be a possibility there. I think actually the team that will come in will be the Blues. I think the Blues getting back-to-back wins, and I think, with a bit of cavalry coming back, I think even though they've got a bit of a tough draw, I think they might be the team that slips into the top 6. And there's no disrespect to the Force, who I think have been playing very, very well, but I just think the Blues now, they're probably one team that I do see sneaking into the top 6.
They'll get the opportunity to find that on their own accord because they play the Force and the Waratahs, the Blues, and obviously got some tough games in and around that, but those are two crucial games that they can take points off teams that are ahead of them.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about the Reds, if I'm honest. I feel like they've got trapped in the Highlanders' mojo of their risk versus reward. Their risk is far too high, and it shows in their... And to me, kicking meters, I know Wayne Smith will be saying, God, this guy just always talks about kicking, but they kicked 400 metres to the Brumbies 800, and when they've won, they've been the team that have kicked 800 and still had the attacking run meters as well. They outran the Brumbies by plenty, but they had 23 turnovers. So there's no point running from your own half. They had 25% failed exits. They only got 2 breakdown steals, and this is why I think the Brumbies are now a real dark horse contender for this competition, is because their ruck efficiency was the highest I've seen since these stats existed, since I've looked at them, 99%. Like that is ridiculous against a Red side that is known for averaging 8 turnovers a game, to only allow them 2, which were, had to be hard fought. That front football, and they've got Lolosio coming on at the right time. They've got Wright, Lonergan, Valentini. I thought it was his best performance we've seen in a long time, and they showed versatility. Everyone thinks, they go to the corner, they're going to maul. Oh yeah, they can maul, but then Valentini's try just says you can't put your head in there too early, because if I come around the corner, it's going to take a bit to stop me. So, obviously the Brumbies are in, but I think the Landers are still a chance, as well as the Canes, to potentially in place of the Reds and the Force.
The Force have got the Canes, the Chiefs, the Brumbies, the Blues, the Drua, and the Tahs. I feel like they are going to fall away. For me, when I look at this, I look at the run that MP has right now. I know they've been inconsistent over the last few weeks, but they've got the Brumbies at home, they've got the Drua at home, they've got the Landers away, they've got the Blues, the Chiefs away, and the Canes away. I feel like they could win 3 of those games, and they could put them in a really solid spot. But when you look at the Blues, Crusaders away, Reds away over the next 2 weeks, that could be something that can end.
I think that's a defining one as well. Those last 2 spots are... they got the Drua away as well. The Blues don't have an easy run in. I totally agree with you. I think on the MP front, this weekend's crucial. If they can bounce back, I think they could probably do 4.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you beat the Brumbies at home, Navigation's home stadium, I've just pumped the Brumbies up to show how efficient. Haven't travelled well. I know they beat the Blues at Eden Park, but the Blues weren't going well. So if they knock them over this weekend, then absolutely. And I just can't solidify a 6.
Yeah.
I've tried every way I look at it, but it's just too tight. I mean, just look at my picks each week. It is so hard.
Even the top pickers in our picking comp, they are struggling. Like last week, the top pickers got 3 picks, so it's just not easy.
No,
it's hard to get it right.
love that.
Yeah,
I love that, because even when you ask this question, I spent a good hour 15 on it trying to look at every different avenue, but I just couldn't get to a point where I was like, yeah, that's my 6.
Yeah.
Because they all play each other, so it's going to be pretty defining.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal, Brenner. So I think you have to be pretty brave to get it right. Can we say that the Crusaders and the Chiefs will stay at the top? Are they the 2 top teams, or do you think an Aussie team can sneak into that top 2?
Look, I think considering how the competition's gone this year, anything can happen. Look, even last week, a couple of weeks ago, Moana Pacifica beating, the Crusaders. Nobody would have picked that. So, and I think with how the Australian teams are now, and they are winning more consistently. Look at the Waratahs on the weekend against the Chiefs. Nobody would have given a chance for the Waratahs, even us, when we didn't even pick them. So, I definitely think there is an opportunity, especially for the Brumbies, with how they're playing. The Reds probably need to fix a few things with the things that Jipper touched on. So, but what it has been a good thing for those Australian teams is they must now have belief. They have belief that they probably can win this competition, where I probably think that they probably might have thought it a few years ago, even last year. But now with getting these wins against New Zealand teams regularly, it seems like there's a lot more confidence in Australian rugby, which is great for the British and Irish Lions, I guess, in a few months' times as well.
I think the Brumbies can. I genuinely do. I'll be honest, I picked the Reds at home. I just didn't see that they're just getting their big dogs back at the right time. And I think they've got the best impact player going around at the moment in Reimer. He comes on and changes the game. He gets breakdown steals where he earns a penalty that gets them to kick a 3 that just nudges it out further. You saw what it meant for them to win at Eden Park. Bernie Larkham crying. Ever since that game and that result at Eden Park, they've just been simmering away in quiet.
Yeah,
in the quiet and scraping to this performance. So I think you couldn't be surprised if they finished 1.
Now, I'm always accused of ignoring the Highlanders, so let's have a talk about the Highlanders' chances. Look, it's a tough run home. 2 games against the Chiefs, 2 games against the Crusaders, away against the Canes. That's a tough run home for the Highlanders. It looks tough for them to get there, Britta.
Yeah, it is tough. But I guess the confidence that you probably can take away from the way that they played on the weekend, it was great to see Falau Fakatava back. I think the way that he played and his injection in that first probably 15 minutes was in and around a lot around the points that they did score. And the biggest thing that I did enjoy about the Highlanders was the way that they finished the game. We've touched on probably a lot of high unforced errors from them the last couple of weeks, but the way to be able to score 3 tries in the last 20 minutes with the game in the balance in terms of with the Fiji and draw coming back at them, it was a pleasing outcome for them considering that they've lost a few games in those kind of situations. But yeah, for me personally, it's pretty tough. It's a tough draw and against some pretty quality outs, some quality sides at the moment. So anything's possible, if they can continue the form and they can keep improving like they did on the weekend and they sorted out a few things compared to the last couple of weeks, there's a chance, but I think it'll be a bit too hard for them to make their top 6 this year.
I think if there's ever a coach to frame it to them in terms of the challenge, they've got to beat them anyway if they want to win the title. So why not start now? So I do think their mindset will be razor sharp and they'll know. And as I just said about the Reds in terms of that risk versus reward, they got the risk versus reward right. They 39 kicks for 1,000 kick metres. Okay, that's probably a hell of a lot. They took that strategy against the Drua, but they had 13 turnovers, only 8 penalties. 82% of their exits were done by kicking, not always just out. Contestable attacking kicks, 0 failed exits, all these sorts of things. If they can get that right and not give those oppositions chances in their half free of charge, and they keep their defensive efforts up, although they tackled 84%, they still made 215 tackles out of 256. Pretty strong. I do think Jacob Ratamataviki-Nepkins is quite a key, firstly, congratulations, to come back from the injuries, come back and to play club rugby and then to play Super Rugby the way he is. But he's balanced out their attack. He had 250 kick metres himself. We haven't seen that from the Highlanders fullback. And it's just his raw pace and his ability to sort of inject himself in the game. He may just be the player that can change up their attacking structure. So I don't think it's all bets are off, because even if they only win 2 or 3 of those games, everyone else that's fighting for those 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th are playing each other. So points are going to be lost everywhere throughout that. So it's not like it's in previous years, they've got to win 5. I just think if they can win 3, I think there's still a chance.
Yeah, they've just got the hardest teams to go up against, which is the tough part.
Yep. But they know how to play under the roof the best.
Yeah.
They really do. And that game that they played against the Drua is exactly how they need to play everyone that comes in there.
Yeah, yes. And that's the Crusaders, the Chiefs and Moana Pacifica.
Yeah, I still think they can get those results.
As promised, we're very glad to welcome onto the show 2-time Rugby World Cup winner, 2-time Sevens World Cup winner, Commonwealth Games winner, and now an Aupiki winner, Portia Woodman Wickliffe. How are you doing?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Yeah, really.
Probably not as happy as you. Well, as the only Blues fan here, I'm still a little bit happier than these other 2, but no, it was an amazing performance. It was a defensive masterclass, really, at the end of the day. Known for your attacking prowess, but tackled at 91%, kept their lightning quick ball to 39%. They only converted 23% of the time in your 22. You must be really happy. That is what defines most teams that win championships.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that, and I think lots of people really only know me for my attacking. I probably only really thought about that as myself as well. But what I've really enjoyed about rugby this year or with Blues is the ability to learn. And I'm learning alongside some amazing players, Ruahei, Kristen. Like these girls are actually amazing players. And so I'm grateful I get to play alongside them. And their defense in that game, I was extremely proud of ourselves, to be really disciplined in those last 5 minutes of that game. Man, it was unbelievable, even for us.
Were there any crucial words that were said within that last 5 minutes? Because, you had 16 penalties and probably no doubt your coaches would have touched on the discipline issues for most of that game. Was there anything that kind of switched that was talked about collectively that had that change in the last 5 minutes?
Clean hard, carry hard. And that was like I guess that's kind of what I remember. There's not a lot that I remember, just the fact that we were able to play to finish out that game. To be honest, I can't remember any messages.
I think that's what they call in flow. So that's a pretty good sign. But with 39% possession, you still got 7 line breaks. You ran more running meters at 965 to their 851. So although that was a defensive masterclass, it was actually an attacking masterclass. For the limited opportunity that you had, you made it count.
We weren't happy with the fact that they had all the ball, right? And we needed to make it happen whenever we did. Like you said, with the limited ball or limited opportunities, we had to make it count for those moments. And I think that's been us throughout the whole season, even to, a couple of our games throughout the season. We had very low possession or even territory, and we were still capitalising on the moments that we did have.
We've traditionally probably seen you playing on the wing, but this year you've been playing in the centre role. How have you found that change up in terms of, I guess, being a distributor, kicking defensively a little bit different? How have you found it? Definitely
harder in the terms of the strategic side. Like I'm a winger, and I was still learning winger as of in 15s. So to come into 13, my biggest mind shift was just catch the ball and run. This is my chance that I get the ball earlier, off the rack. I get to hit it up, which is really cool and different. But I think in terms of defense, I really enjoyed it because I'm able to smash people rather than having to chase them down the sideline. So there's a few different changes there that I really quite liked. But like I said, playing alongside Lou, Sylvia, like these girls were amazing and they made my job really easy, even though I've got a lot to learn still.
We've got Ruahei on the show in a couple of weeks' time, and we pre-recorded the interview, and she is one of the most impressive people I've ever met in rugby circles. So smart, so dedicated, such an amazing leader. What kind of things does she say to you on the field to keep you where you need to be as a centre, when you're still learning your craft?
She allows you to work on your strengths. And I think the cool part is she'll know certain moves that I can probably, do really well. And then there's moves that I'm probably not so good at it. So she'll help me play to my strengths. If my left to right isn't so great or I'm not quite able to see a hole, she'll help me with those moves in the game. She'll be like, hey, maybe just sit back a little bit deeper, stay deeper, or I'm going to look for this inside ball. Like she's really, like you said, she's really, really smart.
We saw it on the weekend, I think. Ruahei put you into a gap at one point where you ran a move where you had someone drift wide and you came in close and went through the gap. But that striking from scrums throughout the season has been huge for you.
Yeah, and I think what I put it down to is Bossy keeping things really simple, and he allows us to make the decisions with no repercussions, right? And when you have players like Lou, you run a hole, you run your line and she will put you in that hole. And like you said, that those two moves, it was the same move, but she was picking different people. And I think for me, I'm still learning, like I need repetition, right? Like these moves are completely new lines, new pictures I'm having to see. So it's getting the repetition for me. Strike moves are really exciting. It's so amazing when you practice it, and it comes out in a game like that, especially in moments like that.
Have you guys done a preview of the Waratahs? Is there, moving into Thursday's crossover final, is there opportunities you see in making it a double whammy?
I'm gonna get myself in a bit of trouble here. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but Lossie has sent in through some review clips. But we played them in pre-season, and we're they're a team that's played together for a long time. They've got a really amazing backline. Like their 13, I think, is really talented. Even their winger, when we played them in preseason, she was making breaks left, right, and centre. So I think it's going to be a really cool challenge, and I'm really looking forward to playing. I'm really looking forward to playing them. Yeah.
They both stood out in the final against the Reds. I think Georgina Friedrichs is the centre, right? And you must have come up against her in the sevens along the way.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we played against her maybe once or twice in the 15s for the Wallaroos. Like I've definitely noticed her throughout the years, and she's a really talented player. And I think her knowledge of the game is really amazing too.
When you look at a game like this and you've got such a short turnaround, you've obviously had some celebrations. How do you make sure that you nail that short turnaround in 3 or 4 days?
I think the big thing is recovery, which is funny. I say that, obviously not having quite done that as well, but it's the little homework moments. Lossie sending in clips, sitting with Lou, getting as many review opportunities and throughout the next couple of days. Tomorrow's training is probably going to be really important, just to kind of nail the opportunities that we see against Waratahs, and that's where the backbone or girls who don't get to strip up, they play a big role in that, right? They play as Waratahs, they will have to play as Waratahs, and they'll defend as Waratahs. So I think for us, it's those moments that we're really going to have to work hard at.
I do love hearing their preparation side, Portia, for Jipper and I, a big part of how we think of the game. So it's great to hear that you're obviously still learning. So just with that, look, this is a hard question, look, because for myself personally and selfishly, would love to continue to keep seeing you on the world stage. Now, I know you've come out early and said that obviously you could be done in that space, but with hearing from you and the ability to want to learn, you still seem like you've got that hunger for the game. Is there any chance that we see you playing rugby more again at the highest level?
I guess there is a chance, but I love rugby and I love blues. So I'm going to be playing rugby for sure, forever. But I really don't know. Like if in my head, when I retired after sevens, it was, I'm finished with New Zealand. I want to play as many opportunities as I can. And like I wanted to go off and travel around the world and play different rugby. And that's kind of still where my mind is. But playing with blues, playing alongside these girls, it's definitely made me question, could I go again? These girls make me want to learn, make me want to play. I love being around them. So who knows?
Oh, Portia, we'd love to see you there. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to see you there. Come on.
Put a contract on the table.
Oh, mate. Is Bunce listening?
You mentioned Lossie a couple of times. Just for the viewers, that's Carlos Spencer. Like, what has it been like learning from him, a guy who played such free-spirited rugby?
It's really cool because you can see his mind thinking, and I love it. I love the way he coaches because he nips it, right? He sees something, he'll tell you straight away, maybe that wasn't quite the right decision. I think we ran a move and I dropped under and he said, just carry straight. Like you can see the pictures and you can see he's thinking and he's creating those opportunities for us. He keeps it simple, but he just really, really supportive. And for me, I love the fact that he's so knowledgeable. Thank
you very much for bestowing your knowledge upon us today. Good luck for the game on Thursday. Hopefully you guys come out as the inaugural crossover winners.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you very much to Portia Woodman. Great to have her on the show. This game on Thursday night, the crossover match, the Blues versus the Tahs, considering what we see at international level, it's got to be hard to think that the Aussie team can win this final.
Oh, yeah, especially being the graveyard of North Harbour Stadium.
There are bodies at North Harbour Stadium?
Oh, mate, it's not a place away teams want to come play. Trust me, Brendan knows all about it. He led the boys through many a victory there. But in all seriousness, I don't see it being close. I think the Blues... no matter the lead up and sometimes less training is best, I think they win.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's if they just continue to keep partying and maybe go to Danny Dorlan's, there could only be a chance with the Waratahs. So
just hydrate, you can win that final, no problem.
And really won enough titles to know, Bryn.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Funnily enough, we won the final, and then we actually ended up playing the Brumbies the following week. in the Trans-Tasman, and we actually ended up drawing. We should have lost that game.
So was it a couple of days off training just to make sure that the boys had enough juice after going all night long, or what was the story there?
I think it was a Saturday and a Sunday, had Monday off, and then we kind of just, it was more recovery based.
Sweat it out, you reckon?
Sauna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dehydrate yourself more. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we've lost our way in the picks again.
Okay.
Going to bring us back on task.
The tipping for round 10 is Super Rugby Pacific. Here it is. Look, we've got some people who are up the top. Try times at the top. If you win this competition by the end of the round robin, you'll come on the show. Give us your opinions. Let us know what you think about what's going on in the world of rugby. So Try Time at the moment, along with Super Scoff, are at the top of that. They only got 3 wins on the weekend, so same as us, mate. Same as us, but they are a good 5 points ahead, which is tough to catch up.
You know where I'm bad? Those the margins. I'm horrific at those at the moment.
I'm not sure I'm even doing those.
Well, you're a few spots ahead of me, so your margin must be pretty good.
I don't remember. Did they give you a bonus margin? They just make it 0. The Crusaders versus the Blues, and please go to this QR code if you want to get tickets to this absolutely classic derby game. Crusaders at home against the Blues. Say it.
Heart says Blues.
Head says Crusaders. There we go.
Can't talk them up like I just have and say, but I do think the Blues have found their way back into this competition with Bodie being back, but also the way they are in the 22, moving the point of contact, not just going through the pick and goes, sort of, lit their tyres, so to speak. And their backs against the wall, no one expects them, and I think that's dangerous when a Blues side goes south with no expectation.
Look, I think it's going to be a tight encounter. The derby games are always dripping. We've been a part of them. It doesn't matter where you are on the table. There's always that little bit of fire in the belly in terms of when you play the Blues Crusaders rivalry. So I'll be picking the Crusaders, but it'll be pretty tight, especially with David Havili if he's not playing as well and what he brings to that side. Right.
The Drua at home against the Tahs. Do the Tahs, having seen them last week, have what it takes to go over to Fiji and get this win?
Oh, I think they do. Look, I think the improvements that I saw in their attack, I think, their backs was their best form of the way they attacked on the weekend. They swang nicely in the animation or the kind of hard lines that they're able to engage the defence on the weekend. That's something they can take forward in Fiji. Now, the conditions in Fiji, whether it's in Lautoka or Suva, it's always trying. So no doubt they're going to get a different team from the draw that they've seen previously in Dunedin. But I actually will pick the Waratahs. I think I'm 2 points behind you boys, and I think with the Fijian duo, the way that they're outgoing confidence-wise, even though they are a different team in Fiji, I think the Waratahs can get the job done. So I'll be picking them against Fiji on the weekend.
I'll be honest, I went on to the tipping early.
Yeah.
And everyone's going for the draw. I need some points back, so I'm going Tahs. There's no actual logic to it. And yeah, that's it really. I'm going point hunting.
I do like that. The logic of the possibly not getting it right, and everybody else getting it right, and you're getting further behind.
It was like 67% all on the draw, and I was like, ooh, here we go.
Yeah, and with
an opportunity.
1 win from 8, I'm not sure that the draw at home.
The 3:30 kickoff is the only.
Yeah.
The other times they've lost, they've been sort of that 6-7 kickoff.
Right.
Which isn't as hard.
Okay. Okay. So there's some logic in that.
But the Crusaders did a number as well. Anyway, that's why I'm going for the Tahs.
Okay. Moana Pacifica at home against the Brumbies. You've been talking up the Brumbies. Can MP get back to where they were before they kind of maybe they tried too much against the Blues?
They wanted it pretty bad, I think.
Yeah.
No, I think I'll have to go the Brumbies. Just for the amount of research I've done around it. But I may change later in the week for point hunting.
Yeah.
For point hunting. Because I went on, everyone's picking the Brumbies for that as well. So
yeah.
I'm surprised how many people go early with their picks. But
I picked the entire year before the start. It's just so in case
you're doing better than me.
If I forget around, then I know that I've got something in there. Brenna, where are you going with Moana Pacifica versus Brumbies?
I'm going to go Moana. Look, I think they'll be disappointed, with the Blues result. No doubt there's a bit of hype. They had back-to-back wins, and I think it was a litmus test for them against the Blues and probably just didn't get it right in terms of the way they were able to play in that game. So I think they'll take the learnings and knowing that the expectation is probably to win against the Brumbies, especially if they do want to make the playoffs. So look, I think they'll take the learnings, they'll see it as another opportunity, and I actually think they'll get the job done against the Brumbies. If they have the same mindset like they did against the Crusaders, go through the front door, which I think they're going to need to have against this forward pack, I think they'll get the result, and they'll get the result done well against the Brumbies.
Cool. Chiefs versus Highlanders, Bryn?
I'll be going to Chiefs. Yep, they'll be licking their wounds and getting that result against the Highlanders.
Yep.
Oh, Chiefs bounce back. They'll be fuming.
Yep. Force at home against the Canes.
Canes.
Canes away.
Yep.
Brenna, do you think Canes away?
Yeah, I think the Canes. I think, they're kind of getting into that desperation mode now. We've kind of touched on the reasons why they haven't won, and look, I think they'll just find a way, whether that's ugly or they finally do click like we saw in one game earlier this year. But yeah, I expect the Hurricanes to get a win to keep their hopes alive for the playoffs at the end of the year.
I think as well they need to look at quick throw-ins. Just because of the forced defensive line-outs and the line-out troubles they've had. If they can get a quick throw-in, just do it. Keep the game going.
Get on with it.
Keep moving.
Take them down.
Just take the line out of it.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Thank you to James Parsons. Thank you to Bryn Hall. Thanks to everyone who helps us put the show to air. And thank you to Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres for sponsoring us and getting us to air each week. We'll catch you again next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.